Hi, everyone. When I got the call from Larry Hill, I said, where are you going to be having that in the state of Wisconsin? Because I will be there wherever it is. And found out it was Green Bay and said, I'm in, home of the Packers. And just last week, I had the opportunity to come back and be with Vicki Fromm, who I think most of you know as well, leading the VA Medical Center in Toma. And just had a wonderful day with Vicki at a Memorial Day site event, and then to see many of the veterans and the great care that they were getting. In fact, I told her I've been to a number of VA medical centers now in the last 5 months, and that was by far the largest group of veterans that said, I am getting the best care that I've ever received out of this center. So, Vicki, congratulations. It was so nice to hear. Also to have Dan Zimmerman here. Dan, thank you very much, from the Secretary of Wisconsin's Department of Veteran Affairs. And certainly, as I already mentioned, Larry, and where is Dick, my driver? I'll tell you, Dick, best driver I can ever have, and I think I left a pair of blue jeans that are in your van, so remind me. I have to wear those tomorrow morning when I depart, or later for hospitality. So Renee Oshinsky is here as well, the director of Vision 12, and Dan Somchek and Vicki and Christine is missing today. Christine Klecker from Madison I wanted to really see, and she's ill. So hopefully she's getting real good care out of her VA Medical Center in Madison. And also to have the Dwayne Honeycutt from our Director of Regional Benefits, and I know all of you know him as well. So let me tell you, fellow veterans, members of the DAV, and all you other distinguished guests, and what's really cool is the auxiliary, to see the auxiliary so well represented in what you do. As I said earlier, it's just great to be able to come back and see smiling faces and people that make sense. Because where I'm currently at the last 5 months, I'm wondering if there's any sense being made out there. It's been very interesting, I'll tell you that. And it's not boring. I will tell you this, you have a president, and we have a president, and we have a vice president whose son is a Marine, and we have a fantastic new leader within VA. And that was the big reason why I chose back in late November to come out of retirement and consider, as my caveats were, only if I could make a difference in helping veterans and their causes. And thank you. And that remains to be seen, because my motto, as I told my wife when I first went into D.C., was that every day I was going to go in, and I go in every morning at 5:45 just to beat the chief of staff in. And I leave around 8 or 9 every night. And my wife, when she is out there, and not back here seeing her 93-year-old mother, would always have something ready for me to eat, and she would always have a cold beer for me. So, I mean, that was a great way to come home. And we'd stay up and chat about the day, and my caveat has always been, if I do one thing that helps a veteran, I've done my job for the day. So every day she reminded me, what did you do that has helped a veteran? And you know, I'm only batting about 500. And so I'm missing the mark after 5 months. So I have a lot of catch up. Only about half the time out of my 12 to 14 hours a day am I actually making a difference. But what I'm going to talk about are the things behind the scenes that I think will really make a big difference for all of us. But I really want to talk about your organization and why you make such a difference, and why people like David Riley and Gary Augustine, who welcomed me to D.C., Gary did, and then to be able to get Dave up with the president and show what Dave can do along with his caregiver wife was a pretty special day for me. So I'll always remember DAV. And when I look at all things, and I'm getting off script here a little bit, all things that you represent with having a disabled and an injury from a wartime injury, if any veteran group deserves what this country owes you, we're underpaying you. Because you gave up something. You left something out there. Yes, we all got back, but you gave something on that battlefield or gave up something later coming from an injury inflicted during a conflict. So I salute all of you for that. 2 weeks ago, I was fortunate to meet and have lunch with a guy named Gary Sinise. Know Gary? Thought you would. I'll tell you what, it's the first time I met him since I saw Lieutenant Dan. And I'll tell you, he loves DAV. We talked for about an hour and a half about his foundation and organization, but it really was predicated from DAV teaching him about what it was like to be Lieutenant Dan. So I wanted to say on behalf of Gary, he goes, Jake, you're going to meet a great group of folks. And I said, there's no question about that. So Gary Sinise says hi and salutes every one of you. Now let me get into a few things about what we're trying to do at the VA. As I said, great new leader in Dr. Shulkin. He's a doctor. You know, he came with a lot of people saying, well, he's not a veteran. But when you look at his family, he is a veteran. His father was the first pharmacist at the VA in Madison, Wisconsin. In fact, a lot of his family was around Madison. And he's been a very successful doctor that has turned around hospitals that just weren't going to make it out on the East Coast, and some pretty big ones. And yes, he's had to close a pretty big one, too, that just wasn't making the mark, and it was very painful. So he knows what that pain is all about as well. But he's also a pretty dynamic leader who has a can-do attitude that I think has woken everybody up, at least in my 5-month tenure, as saying, we need to get on with making a difference for our veterans. We need to stop talking and take action. So I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you paid attention to him or not, but he's pretty dynamic. He's pretty bold. He's got some new, what some people said are crazy, wacky ideas. I think they're right on the mark. I think it's where the VA needs to go to be much better service aligned as an entire organization. And so with that, I look at what does DAV do and represent as far as a veteran service organization. I just look at the things that you do. You know, after talking to David, and certainly Gary beats me on the head once a month with, Jake, do you know this is what we've been doing? And now I do. I do know that your national transportation network drives millions of miles, millions, to get veterans to appointments to our VA. I also know that 700,000 rides took place from you folks and your auxiliary folks last year. That's absolutely amazing. And over 40,000 here in Wisconsin. I mean, no other organization is as actively involved as taking care of veterans and servicing them as the DAV. Your transition service officers, you folks out there that were standing up earlier when I got here, your national service officers, every veteran I talk to usually will say they know who you are because you provide them a free and valuable service that they probably could not get without paying some pretty big bucks and just filling out some of those forms, am I right? Even though they're online now, that's another subject for some of us. I'm not computer savvy. My daughter had to set my phone up. But listen, that's the wave of the future. If you listen to Dr. Shulkin, we're going to have apps for everything. That's going to show you wait times at a VA facility. Can you make an appointment with a doctor? Know the doctor's name. I mean, this is the future that's coming. Hopefully I'll be around to see some of it starting to actually be put into place. And some of you may have heard that after the Secretary was confirmed Do you know what he was confirmed at? You know what the vote was? Shout it out. 100 to nothing. I mean, that's unheard of. 100 to nothing. So right away what it did, and it gave us a window of time, is Congress is aligned on one thing, and that they are dead serious about taking care of veterans. The promise of the President and the promise now of Congress, it is up to us, the people that are working within the VA, to deliver on that promise, to make sure that you are getting the best care when you need it, how you need it, and when you need it, and where you need it. So we have amazing support. You know, there's budget stuff that just came out, and it was amazing that the VA was one of only 2 departments that was not cut. And if you were out in D.C. and are out in D.C., I have friends in 28 other agencies. 26 of those friends are living through some really difficult times right now. Can you imagine what it would be like to be in the EPA right now? A good friend of mine is. It is not pretty. So I look at where we are in the VA. We got a nice little increase of 6%, which is unheard of in the healthcare business. I mean, if you're lucky in any private healthcare business to get a 1 to 2% increase, a lot of them are decreasing because they're not making the competitive mark. So it's going to provide us an additional $3.5 billion in mandatory funding for choice program. And we'll talk about choice, and we'll have a lot of discussions about that shortly. I heard a couple of laughs. We're willing to change. I can tell you that. I came there to see change in the right direction. 11 other folks that we brought in. 11, that's it. They're all change agents. Where are my Marines out there? Yeah, there you go. And God bless all the rest of you, too. Army, Navy, Coast Guard, National Guard, Army. We love you all. The Air Force, you're flying us. Thank you. But let me tell you, as Dr. Shulkin said, if you study businesses or hospitals, and if your company starts to rest on its laurels, and I can say that about beer companies, too. I know plenty of them that did this, that rested on their laurels and weren't paying attention to their customers, eventually something went wrong. And in a lot of cases, the company completely died. I can list 5 beer companies off of one hand, but I remember the one company that blew me away that just, I said, this company, if I ever had money, I'd invest in Kodak. I mean, everybody's got a camera, it's a Kodak, and everybody's got film, it's Kodak. Kodak ain't no more. Rested on their laurels, didn't change. We have to change. Some change is going to be painful. Some things not all veterans are going to like. And that's going to be tough conversations. And we are not going to allow your veteran organization to take a hit. I spoke to some of you earlier, and I said if there's one organization from my standpoint that deserves every dollar it gets, it's DAV. Now, that being said, we're going to have to start making some tough choices when you're looking 10 years down the road. And I can tell you that just from the Secretary's standpoint and knowing him, that he's very focused on doing 5 things. And the first one is the right thing to do, and he understands it better than anybody because he's seen the business I just talked about, hospitals dying that did not live up to their standards and their laurels. But we need to give our veterans better access to care when they need it and how they need it. And that is called, from the old program that I say is now a dirty word, and it's choice, is because it was set up so poorly. I think we can all agree with that. It was a 90-day setup. It did not have the right providers. It still does not have the right providers. But I can tell you, if properly done, and I will also give you my honest assessment, we are not 100% there yet. You know how fast we have to be there? By next Wednesday. Do you think people are working this weekend? Why do you think I'm leaving and go back at 6:30 tomorrow morning? We have until next Wednesday to get the old choice rebranded, set up where it's actually going to be impactful, make a difference, and be simple and easy for our VA and our veterans to implement, and for our veterans to make it. Until that happens, we should not get another dollar from Congress, even though they've given it to us already. So I couldn't believe it. They're giving us something that doesn't work very well. So that being said, we need to make it work well. That's number one. Number two is we need to modernize our VA. And it's going to be a huge investment. And it concerns Dr. Shulkin because he said during his press conference that was in the White House this past week, which is unheard of, first time ever, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs was ever giving a briefing from the White House press room. And the press room was full, I can tell you that. I don't know if anybody saw it online or clips, but it was extremely well done. He's extremely honest, transparent, truthful, and laid everything out on the line, and I'm just re-emphasizing his points right now. It's going to cost us some big dollars. We're going to need more dollars probably for the IT to get completely linked and interoperable between us and DOD, and to streamline our benefits, and also to earmark and mark our military once they leave to the time they join a VA. We need to focus our resources more efficiently and effectively. What does that mean? Well, we have to get rid of some old stuff that we like having around, but it's not useful or purposeful anymore. We need to improve our timeliness of service. In some areas of the United States, it's unsat. There's no way that any VA hospital should have wait times. My opinion, not anybody else, my opinion is we should be faster than the private sector. And in many places, we're not. In Wisconsin, we beat the private sector, whether it's Toma, Milwaukee, or Madison. So the quality of care, the wait time is not an issue in this state, and that's a good thing. We're very, very fortunate. And the last point of Dr. Shulkin, but his first clinical thing that he is focused on and has got us all focused on is suicide prevention. And we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to get a little emotional because I have my own story. And it happened to me after I left Vicki and her team at Toma. I told her a friend of the family had a suicide of their son, who was a young Marine from my hometown in Chippewa Falls. And his brother worked at the brewery for 36 years. And his grandpa worked at the brewery for 43 years. And the young Marine, I told the family after meeting with them, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my 65 years. But it was my obligation, my duty, as a Marine, to go see a Marine's family that was in deep pain and sorrow and grief. This is Tony Samans. Young Marine, 31 years old, took his life 12 days ago. The military failed him. The Marine Corps failed him. The VA failed him. His private doctor failed him. This has to stop. 20 a day, every day, like clockwork. So suicide prevention is something everyone in the VA, everyone in this room needs to think about, because it's happening now closer than ever. There's no longer 6 degrees of separation, is there? I'll bet you everybody here knows of someone who's lost someone to suicide. So from a national basis, you would think between DOD, VA, HHS, with some of the best and brightest people, with some of the best money, some of the best doctors in the world, that we could finally get to a place. And that's really where we need to head, and we'll hear more about that because there's a lot of great work going on. And I can tell you from the mental health capacity services, we are leading in the state of Wisconsin between Milwaukee and now Toma with Vicki Fromm and what she is doing, along with Renee Oshinsky's leadership out of the VISN. I told them you should become one of the key pinpoints in America for leading in mental health, behavioral health, and suicide prevention. And they're actively pursuing that right now. So that's what I'm saying. When we start looking at money, we need to start resourcing our VAs. First of all, to help all of you in this room who have been disabled. Second of all, to make sure that those young men and women are getting proper care, even if they say they are okay. We need to earmark or mark them, knowing that they may have issues later, the so-called hidden injuries. And that is a big, big thing that's going on. And also, it was nice to see that our president has ordered the establishment now for the first time ever, and Dr. Shulkin endorsed it. We're going to have an accountability office that is going to seek out and make sure that we can properly remove people that aren't doing their duties on a daily basis. It's a big move. As Dr. Shulkin said, we have this come up every day in his morning meetings. Thank God I missed it this morning. But every day we're talking about a bad person within VA that has not treated a vet correctly or has misused his rank privilege or her rank privilege and title, or has done something illegal, immoral, or unethical. And we cannot actually fire those people. So that has to change. And so now with this executive order and with the bill in Congress, ready to be approved by Senate, hopefully next week, accountability needs to take shape. I agree with that. So with that, Secretary Shulkin says that he made another bold move. Some people disagreed with this, that he said, I'm going to provide emergency mental health care to former service members with other than honorable discharges at all of our medical facilities. I thought that was great. Do you know that most all of those less than honorable, they were combat-related veterans? That surprised me. I did not know that. That had issues. It might have been a bar fight. Might have done something that, happened on base before they left, and they can't get the treatment. So it's happening now. We need to get that word out. So at the end of the day, we want all veterans to get the care they need and the care they deserve wherever and whenever. I said that 3 times now. And that's what this choice is all about. It's not about closing VA. VA is an integral, vital part to the American fabric. It's about who we are. It's essential for our national security. It absolutely is. People don't realize that. It's 168 hospitals with great doctors and staff in the most part, and it has over 1,000 CBOCs/clinics that do great service for our veterans in need, which are all of you. And we can't let that go away. But at the same time, we need to also integrate ourselves. That's where healthcare is going. You ask any director, ask any doctor. They will tell you integrated healthcare is the wave of the future, which it is if you think about care. Not every facility has the best cardiologist. And I'm telling you, if Toma doesn't have an #1 cardiologist, I would think that you would probably want to go to Madison or Milwaukee, right? We should have that capability as well. I can tell you in northern Wisconsin or in Montana or in Alaska, they don't have those choices. So we have to look at alternatives for them to get their care outside of the system where we don't have availability of those skills. But it is not about using the P word. I hate the P word. What's the P word? Privatization. Yeah. There is no such thing as privatization. It really isn't. I mean, you can believe me now, but the proof is going to be in the pudding, right? There is not going to be privatization. There's going to be competition. And that scares some people. Okay, we are now, if you watch what the Secretary has done, he's making us competitive with every other healthcare facility in the neighborhood. He's done something that some people could not believe. He said, I'm going to show everybody on a website what the wait times are in each one of my centers. I asked Vicki and Renee and a few other of the directors, I bet you there were some nervous people if they're popped up with 80-day wait time out in the country, am I right? Should be a little nervous. I'd be a little nervous too if I was a director. So what does that mean? Oh my, they're showing that I'm not doing my job or I'm not doing it well. Either that or I've got some issues that I need more help to correct. That's what it's doing. It's bringing for the first time to light where some of our problem areas are, that we can put some resources and money and fix those facilities and centers. And also I can tell you from my 5 months out in the field, the short amount of time I've been out there, it's all about leadership. I don't care if it's the VA, the DOD, or if it's a company or your small little business. It's all about the leadership and how it's run and the type of people that they bring in. I've gone to a VA that was below the standards of what it should be, and I can tell you what the reason was. What do you think the reason was? Leadership. We need to make sure that VA is getting some of the best leaders, so we may have to change the rules a little bit and ask Congress for that. Now's the time to do it. We may have to look at upping the ante for the salaries to make them more competitive so that we are able to keep more and retain some of the best doctors in the world. So let me talk a little bit about this young captain. In 1966, he took command of a company in An Khai, Vietnam. At that time, he was a little wary and disillusioned, and the men of his unit were cautious about this new energetic commander. But this guy, he quickly restored their morale. They had a couple of setbacks. They had 5 or 6 deaths in the previous month. And in short, he inspired them, and as a very young captain, he earned their respect. He was scheduled to leave in 1966, but he said, you know what, I want to stay on for a couple extra months. So he requested to stay. It was approved. And on January 27, 1967, his men surprised him with a 27th birthday party. But they had to cancel it because the helicopters were waiting for them to lead an air assault on the North Vietnamese regimental headquarters. So the cake and the beer and the hot dogs and burgers were on the grill, and they left. And as their helicopters set down for the mission, a machine gun raked the captain's aircraft multiple times. Bullets shattered both his left arm, his right arm, his left leg, and one struck him in the head. His friends thought for sure he was dead. He moved out of the helicopter. He moved towards the enemy. And months later, after numerous surgery and then years of recovery and rehabilitation, which started in the military hospitals of Vietnam, to Hawaii, to San Francisco, and to many VA facilities later. He ended up blind in one eye, partially blind in the other. He carried a large depression/hole in his head and was racked with terrible headaches. His leg wounds were horribly painful, and he only had use of one arm. He was confined to a wheelchair most of the time. But with the care and love of a strong family, coupled with his great spirit, this young man persevered. He was reintroduced to his high school sweetheart, and they married in 1972. And they brought a home together, a real small one. They bought a neat life together. But what was the most remarkable thing that this man did? He refused to see himself as disabled. He prayed at each meal, thanking God for sending him his wife and making it possible to live at a home in a free country. And once when his wife mentioned about his sacrifice for all of his injuries, he kept saying, "Honey, I had friends who didn't come back. I'm enjoying the freedoms they died for." Of this indescribable pain that he endured, he said to his sister when speaking of a wounded comrade, "I should never complain about the pain in my legs or in my head because I have them." Many of us unknowingly encountered this man's photograph. Prior to going to Vietnam, Captain Sam Bird was assigned to the Old Guard at Fort Myer. And on November 25th, 1963, he was the officer in charge of the casket detail at the funeral of President John F. Kennedy. Historian William Manchester described him that day as the lean, sinewy Kansas City boy who is the kind of American youth when congressmen dutifully praise each 4th of July and whose existence many, grown jaded by years up on the hill, secretly doubt. Well, each of us know that such people exist today. They're in this room. So I honor serving and having served with each and every one of you. And though Sam Bird passed away in 1984, many, many other disabled American veterans show that same courage, determination, and confidence to rebuild your lives, to maintain a sense of humor, endure through some unspeakable pain. But you know what? You still all show compassion for each other and for others. So I salute all of you of DAV, the DAV auxiliaries, and your tremendous leadership. It is so good to be with you. I'm so honored. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, DAV.